The antique clock struck 5:17, just as the silver SUV skidded onto the gravel. My knees throbbed, but I stood frozen on the porch, watching my daughter-in-law drag that familiar leather bag from the trunk. She heaved it into the dark water with a heavy splash. She thought she was burying a secret, but she had just woken up a grieving mother who had absolutely nothing left to lose. My name is Eleanor Marsh, though most people just call me Ellie. At 61 years old, standing on the polished teak deck of the Ocean Serenity, I should have felt like the luckiest woman alive. My son, Tyler, had insisted I take this vacation, calling it a necessary escape from the grind of daily life. The night air was thick with salt and humidity, but as I leaned against the railing, the wind suddenly shifted. It brought a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The deck was unusually empty for such a clear night, and for a split second, the ship's emergency strobe light flickered overhead before dying out completely. "Compliments of Mr. Marsh. Ma'am," a voice said from the shadows. I jumped, turning to find a waiter I did not recognize holding a silver tray. He offered me a highball glass filled with an amber liquid that smelled aggressive even from a distance. "He called ahead," the waiter said, his voice smooth. "Said to make sure his mother was having a memorable time." I took the glass, the heavy crystal cold against my palm. "My son. He spoils me too much," I said, forcing a light chuckle. As soon as the waiter turned his back, I poured the drink into a nearby planter. The fumes hit my nose. It smelled like industrial cleaner, not aged whiskey. A metallic clang echoed from the decks below, followed by a faint, hissing sound that the ocean breeze could not quite mask. The public address system crackled with static. Then a voice muttered something about a system test, but the audio was garbled, layered with a strange feedback loop. My instincts, sharpened by decades of navigating life alone, screamed at me to move. I hurried back to my suite. I knew I had locked the door before heading up to the deck. Yet as I approached, I saw the heavy mahogany door sitting slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room was a disaster. My clothes were strewn across the floor, the drawers pulled out and dumped. My stomach dropped. My passport was gone. My return ticket was gone. The only thing remaining on the desk was a thick stack of papers that had not been there before. It was a travel insurance policy, the kind with clauses in tiny print. But one sentence stood out in bold type. "All assets to be transferred to Tyler Marsh upon confirmed death at sea." At the bottom of the page, in fresh blue ink, was the signature Eleanor Marsh. I ran my thumb over it. It looked perfect. It looked exactly like my hand. But I had never signed this. "What on earth?" I whispered, my voice trembling. Click. The electronic lock behind me engaged with a decisive snap. I spun around and lunged for the handle, but it was deadlocked. Then the hissing sound returned, louder this time, coming from the ventilation ducts. The smell of gas flooded the small space, pungent and suffocating. I looked up at the smoke detector, waiting for the red light to flash, but it remained dark. Someone had killed the sensors. "Help, is anyone out there?" I screamed, pounding on the solid wood. "Open this door." A spark popped from the wall outlet near the bed, likely rigged to the wiring. The gas caught instantly. A sheet of orange flame whooshed across the carpet, separating me from the door. The heat was instantaneous and searing. I grabbed the heavy brass lamp from the bedside table and smashed the small porthole window. the safety glass shattering into 1,000 diamonds. Coughing violently, I ripped the sheets from the bed, twisting them with desperate strength. The heat was blistering my skin. I squeezed my body through the broken window, my joints screaming in protest, and lowered myself down just as the cabin behind me erupted. The force of the explosion blew me clear of the hull, and I slammed against the cold steel of the ship's side, grabbing a dangling lifeline with bleeding hands. I hung there, suspended over the black, churning ocean, gasping for air. My shoulder felt dislocated, screaming with agony. I looked up toward the upper deck, praying for a rescue crew. Instead, I saw him. A tall, slender man stood by the railing, looking down at the smoke billowing from my window. He was lighting a cigar, the flame illuminating his face for a brief second. It was Tyler. He took a long drag, checked his watch, and turned his back, walking away with the casual stride of a man who had just taken out the trash. The betrayal hit me harder than the explosion. Tears mixed with the soot on my face as I tightened my grip on the rope, refusing to let go. If I live through this night, Tyler, I promise you one thing. I hissed into the roaring wind, my voice breaking. I will show you exactly what a one-way ticket looks like. I lived a quiet life in Mapleford, Maine, the kind of place where the cold settles deep into your bones and the pine forests stretch on forever. My small wooden house sat right on the edge of the woods, a sanctuary I had maintained alone since my husband passed. For over 30 years, I worked as an accountant for a local firm called Harborline Structures, tracking every penny and balancing every ledger until a mild heart condition forced me into early retirement. It was a simple, solitary existence, one that stood in stark contrast to the dazzling world my son, Tyler, now inhabited. Tyler was my only child, and to the outside world, he was a resounding success story. He was the CEO of Lynx Horizon Capital, a tech investment fund in New York City. He was wealthy, charismatic, and always busy. On social media, he carefully curated the image of a devoted, filial son, posting photos of us on holidays with captions about sacrifice and gratitude. In reality, I saw him perhaps twice a year, and our phone calls were brief and distracted. Looking back, the signs of his nature were there even when he was a boy. Tyler was brilliant, yes, but he had a manipulative streak. He knew exactly what to say to get what he wanted, twisting situations until I felt guilty for denying him anything. I always excused it, telling my friends he was just intelligent for his age. I remember visiting his office in Manhattan a few years ago. He paraded me around the glass-walled floor, introducing me to his staff as the single mother who fought for him. It made me proud, until I saw a spreadsheet open on his monitor. He pointed to a figure and joked to a colleague. "That is the maturity value on the maternal asset. Low yield now, but guaranteed later." When I asked him about it, he laughed and told me it was just industry humor. The distance between us grew when he married Sabrina. She was a sharp, ambitious woman who worked as the PR director for his company. Sabrina never treated me with warmth. She looked at me like I was a liability, a lingering expense that needed to be managed. The tension escalated when Tyler convinced me to sell my beloved house in Mapleford. "Mum, you need to be in Silver Oaks residency," he had insisted, holding my hand across the table with practiced concern. "It is safer there. You need better medical care nearby." I signed the papers because I trusted him. It was only later that I realized the deed to the new apartment was not in my name, but held by one of his subsidiary funds. Then came the sudden interest in my health. My doctor had advised rest, but Tyler became obsessed. He asked about my prescriptions, my life expectancy, and my insurance coverage with an intensity that felt less like care and more like an audit. The breaking point happened 3 weeks ago. I was staying at their penthouse for a rare weekend visit. I woke up for a glass of water and heard voices in the kitchen. "We need to adjust the will. Ty." Sabrina's voice was low but clear. "If we increase the premium now, the payout brackets shift significantly." "I am handling it," Tyler replied, his voice devoid of emotion. "Just keep her happy for a few more months." I walked into the kitchen, my hands shaking. "What payout are you talking about? What are you two planning?" Tyler didn't even flinch. He smiled that charming, empty smile. "Mom, you are hearing things. We were discussing my estate planning, not yours. You are just tired and confused." He spun the story so fast I felt dizzy. To make up for the argument, he presented me with the envelope the next morning. "A 10-day cruise around the Caribbean," he announced, placing the gold-embossed ticket in my hand. "Ocean serenity. You deserve to rest. Mom, you have worked too hard to worry about money or the future." I looked at the ticket. A deep, instinctual part of me screamed that this was wrong, but I was lonely. I wanted to believe that my son still loved me, that the coldness was just my imagination and the paranoia of an old woman. "Thank you, Tyler," I whispered, fighting back tears. "This is very generous of you. Anything for you, Mum," he said, kissing my forehead. I walked onto that ship thinking I was the luckiest mother in the world. I had no idea I was agreeing to my own funeral. The VIP lounge at the airport was colder than I expected. Tyler was glued to his phone, his thumbs flying across the screen, while a woman from Blue Harbor Voyages handled my luggage with white gloves. "I have to go. Mum, the board meeting starts in 40 minutes, Tyler said, barely looking up. He shoved a thick, cream-colored envelope into my hand. "There is $2,000 in cash in there. Just enjoy yourself. I will see you in 10 days. "Tyler, wait." I started, reaching for his arm, but he was already turning away, his coat flapping behind him as he vanished into the crowd. At the check-in desk, the agent handed me a heavy cardstock boarding pass. I noticed small red letters stamped in the bottom corner, "One way." "Excuse me?" I asked, pointing at the text with a trembling finger. "Why does this say, 'One way, I am definitely coming back'?" The agent smiled, that perfect, plastic smile. "It is just a logistics code for this specific charter group. Mrs. Marsh, your return flight is on a separate manifest. It is nothing to worry about." I nodded, trying to accept the explanation, and walked toward the gangway. A woman behind me, an elderly lady with bright purple glasses named Judith, leaned in close. "I have been on 20 cruises in my life," Judith whispered, chuckling dryly. "I have never seen a ticket marked one way like that before. Hope they do not plan on making us swim home." I forced a laugh, but the unease settled in my stomach like a cold stone. The ocean serenity was magnificent, a floating palace of gold trim and velvet upholstery. Yet, as I walked down the corridor to my suite, a framed poster on the wall caught my eye. It was an advertisement for a company called Evertide Life Assurance, promoting a package called the Seafair Departure. It promised a dignified and fully covered burial at sea for peace of mind. I shivered. Who advertises funerals on a luxury vacation inside my cabin? A thick leather binder sat on the coffee table. It was filled with forms bearing the Evertide Life Assurance logo. I flipped through them. On the third page, under the beneficiary section, it was already typed out, Links Horizon Capital. Just standard liability waivers, a crew member said. He was lingering by the door, waiting for a tip. It is best to sign them now so the captain can process your VIP status. I reached for my pen, but another man, a younger housekeeper with a heavy accent, stepped in to adjust the curtains. His name tag read, Marek. He moved between me and the other crew member, blocking his view. On the ocean, Marek murmured, keeping his voice so low I barely heard him. People trust insurance papers more than stories. You should read every word before you put ink on that paper. He slipped out before I could ask him what he meant. My heart rate spiked. I pulled out my phone and dialed Tyler. Why is your company listed as the beneficiary on these travel forms? I asked as soon as he picked up. Tyler sighed loudly on the other end. Mum, really, it is a corporate perks package. I got a 60% discount by bundling it through the firm. Do you have any idea how much money I spent on this trip for you? Thousands? And you are worried about paperwork? Just relax. Mum, stop looking for problems where there are none. He hung up before I could say another word. That night at dinner, the atmosphere felt heavy. At the table behind me, two men in expensive suits were drinking scotch and speaking in hushed tones. It is the same provider as the incident last year, one said. Evertide, old widow, fell overboard near the Virgin Islands. Her son cashed out $3 million within a week. It was the cleanest payout I ever saw. My fork clattered against my plate. I looked around, but the staff just smiled their vacant smiles. Every time I asked about the safety drill or the exact route, they deflected, simply saying that Evertide covers all contingencies. On the third night, I fell into a fitful sleep. I dreamt I was floating in the dark water, cold and alone. I tried to swim, but my wrist was weighed down by a plastic hospital bracelet. I brought it close to my face. It did not have my name. It just said, "One way," in bold red letters. I woke up gasping, my sheets soaked in sweat. The clock read 4:30 in the morning. I knew I could not sign those papers. First thing tomorrow, I decided. I would go down to the infirmary and demand to see the medical profile Tyler had submitted on my behalf. The bright fluorescent lights of the ship's medical center hummed with a low, irritating buzz that made my headache worse. I stared at the tablet Dr. Ramos held out to me, my breath catching in my throat. On the screen was a comprehensive medical history file labeled Eleanor Marsh. It detailed a severe heart condition I barely had, an exaggerated risk of stroke, and pages of data from my clinic back in Mapleford. At the bottom of the consent form was a digital signature. It was my name, in my handwriting. But I had never seen this document before in my life. Dr. Ramos, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. I did not authorize the release of these records. The doctor, a young man with tired eyes, shrugged dismissively as he tapped the screen. Your emergency contact uploaded them prior to departure to ensure we could provide the best care. Honestly, Mrs. Marsh, it is standard procedure for passengers in your demographic. Evertide Life Assurance usually categorizes cases like yours as high risk, but they are incredibly high profit for the underwriters. He froze, realizing he had said too much, and quickly swiped the screen off. I mean, it is just for safety. Show me the insurance rider, I demanded, stepping closer. Now. Reluctantly, he pulled up the file. I scanned the legal jargon until my eyes landed on a clause highlighted in yellow death at sea. Body unrecoverable. Payout expedited. The payout sum was $5 million. The sole beneficiaries were Tyler Marsh and Lynx Horizon Capital. I felt the blood drain from my face. I scrolled down further and found an email attached to the file, sent from Tyler, Marsh Lynx Horizon, Co., to the insurance agent. The text was brief and chilling. Mother will embark alone. Health fragile. Make sure process is seamless. Our firm appreciates discretion. I need to use a phone, I said, backing away toward the door. My cell has no signal. I found a satellite phone in the business center near the library. My hands shook as I dialed the number for the Evertide agent listed on the document. Evertide Assurance, Claims Department? A woman answered. Hello, I said, trying to pitch my voice lower, smoother. This is Sabrina Marsh. I am calling to check on the policy for Eleanor Marsh. There was a pause, and the sound of typing. Ah, yes, Mrs. Marsh. We have the policy right here. The Seafair departure package you and your husband authorized is active. Sabrina was in on it. Of course she was. I gripped the receiver tighter. I have a question, I said, forcing the words out. Hypothetically, if my mother-in-law were to pass away on this trip, specifically if it happens at sea where recovery is difficult, how long is the payout timeline? It is quite fast, ma'am. The agent replied efficiently, 7 to 10 days. As long as we have a report of death signed by the ship's doctor and the captain, and the body is designated unrecoverable due to maritime conditions, the funds are wired directly to Lynx Horizon. No autopsy is required in international waters. I hung up. The silence in the room was deafening. I was not a person to them anymore. I was a transaction. I just needed to slip, or have a sudden heart attack in my cabin, and the preloaded medical files would explain everything. Dr. Ramos would sign the paper. The captain would log the accident, and Tyler would be $5 million richer within a week. I hurried back to my cabin, locking the door behind me. I dragged my suitcase onto the bed and ripped open the lining of the inner pocket. Deep inside, tucked between layers of fabric, I found another thick envelope I had missed before. Inside were power of attorney documents. They authorized the immediate sale of my Silver Oaks apartment and the liquidation of my retirement savings upon the issuance of a death certificate. The signature at the bottom was a perfect forgery of my own. My chest tightened, a physical pain that had nothing to do with my heart. I remembered every time Tyler told me not to drive because it was unsafe. Every time he insisted on managing my bank accounts because the technology was too confusing. Every time Sabrina asked about my medication. It was never love. It was never concern. It was a long, meticulous audit before the final liquidation. I stood up, grabbing the papers. I had to get to the bridge. I had to show this to the captain before night fell. Just as I reached for the door handle, the cabin lights flickered and died. A moment later, the fire alarm began to blare, a harsh, rhythmic scream. Attention passengers! The PA system crackled. We are detecting a pressure anomaly in the gas lines on the residential deck. Please remain in your cabins and seal the doors while our technical team investigates. Do not enter the hallways. I froze. They were not checking the lines. They were clearing the hallways so there would be no witnesses. The accident had begun. The memory of the explosion is fractured, a chaotic blur of heat and noise. I remember the terrifying friction of the bedsheets burning my palms as I slid down the side of the ship. I remember the deafening boom that shook the steel hull, the blast of hot air that slammed me against the metal, and the moment my fingers found the cold, wet lifeline. I dangled there over the black water, screaming until my throat was raw. When the crew finally hauled me up with a rope ladder, the narrative was already being written for me. I was shivering violently, coughing up soot, trying to grab the lapels of the first officer's uniform. "It was a bomb!" I gasped, my teeth chattering uncontrollably. "My son. He planned this. Check the insurance papers." But they did not listen. Dr. Ramos was there instantly, his face a mask of professional concern that hid something darker. "She is in shock," Dr. Ramos told the crew, his voice calm and authoritative. "Carbon monoxide poisoning and acute stress reaction. She is hallucinating." "No, I am not crazy," I shouted. But my limbs felt heavy. I felt the sharp prick of a needle in my arm before I could fight back. The sedative hit me like a sledgehammer, dragging me into a dark, dreamless sleep. I woke up in a sterile room in St. Callisto. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, too bright and too cheerful for the nightmare I was living. A man in a sharp grey suit sat in the chair beside my bed. It was Victor Hale, the chief legal counsel for Lynx Horizon. I had seen him once at a company party, smiling as he evicted a startup founder from his own building. "Mrs. Marsh," Victor said, his voice smooth as silk. "Thank God you're awake. We were so worried." "Where is the police?" I croaked, my throat dry. "I want to report an attempted murder." Victor sighed, a sound of practiced patience. "Eleanor, please." The cruise line has already admitted to a technical fault in the gas manifold. It was a tragic accident. Making wild accusations against your own family, well, it suggests the trauma is deeper than we thought. Focus on healing. Evertide will handle all the medical bills. 2 local police officers entered the room then. I sat up, ignoring the pain in my ribs. "Officer, listen to me," I pleaded. "My son, Tyler Marsh, and his wife, Sabrina. They falsified medical records. They took out a policy for $5 million on my life. You have to check the ship's logs." The older officer looked at his notepad, then at Victor, then back at me with pity. "Ma'am, Dr. Ramos's report says you inhaled a significant amount of toxic fumes. Confusion is a common side effect. The cruise line is accepting full liability for the mechanical failure." "It was not mechanical," I cried out, tears of frustration stinging my eyes. "Why won't anyone listen to me?" The younger officer, a woman with sharp dark eyes named Detective Rosa Alvarez, did not look at her partner. She looked at me. She watched my hands shaking, the genuine terror in my eyes. She didn't say a word, but as she turned to leave, she deliberately dropped her business card on the bedside table. "I will review the financial details if I get jurisdiction," Rosa murmured, so only I could hear. "Rest now." Then came the performance. Victor held up a tablet. "Tyler is on the line. He has been frantic." The screen lit up. Tyler was sitting in his office, his face pale, eyes red-rimmed. "Mum," Tyler shouted, his voice cracking perfectly. "Oh my God. Mum, I was so scared. I should have been there. I'm so sorry. I never should have let you go alone." The police officers looked moved. The nurse wiped a tear. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, but I saw the slight tightness in his jaw. "I am alive, Tyler," I said, my voice flat. Thank God, he sobbed. I am flying down as soon as the doctors clear you. We will get through this. Victor ushered the police and the nurse out to give us privacy. As soon as the door clicked shut, Tyler's face changed. The tears vanished instantly. His eyes went dead and cold. You are making a scene, Mother, Tyler said, his tone dropping an octave. Stop talking about murder. Stop talking to the police. I have hired the best lawyers to manage the settlement. You are going to sign the papers they give you, and we are going to be a happy family again. Do you understand? Or do we need to discuss your fragile heart condition again? A chill ran down my spine that was colder than the ocean. He was threatening to finish the job. I understand, I stammered, forcing myself to look down, to look broken. I am just confused. I am sorry. Tyler. Good, he said, relaxing slightly. Rest up. I will see you soon. The screen went black. I lay back against the pillow, my heart pounding a steady, furious rhythm. He thought he had won. He thought I was just a scared old woman who would do as she was told. But as I stared at the ceiling, I made a vow. I would not sign anything. I was going back to America, and I was going to find every scrap of paper, every email, and every dirty dollar he had hidden. Next time, there would be no accidents. Detective Rosa Alvarez pulled strings I did not know she had to get me on a medical transport flight back to Boston. Before the bay doors of the plane closed, she pressed a flash drive into my palm. I kept a digital copy of the insurance rider and the initial incident report. Rosa whispered, looking over her shoulder to ensure no one was watching. I cannot open a case in St. Callisto without a body or a confession. But if you find something solid up north, call me. Returning to Mapleford was not the homecoming I needed. The locks on my apartment at Silver Oak still worked, but that was the only thing that had not been violated. When I logged into my bank account, the balance was zero. My savings, my retirement, everything had been transferred out. Worse, a letter on the counter informed me that my apartment had been leveraged as collateral for a massive corporate loan taken out by Lynx Horizon. It was all legal, authorized by the power of attorney document bearing the signature I never wrote. I went to see Martin Keegan, my late husband's oldest friend and our family lawyer for 30 years. I expected him to be furious on my behalf. Instead, he sat behind his mahogany desk and refused to meet my eyes. Eleanor, the documents are notarized, Martin said, his voice devoid of warmth. If you signed the power of attorney, there is nothing I can do. You gave him the right to manage your assets. I did not sign it. I slammed my hand on the desk. Martin, you know me. You know I would never sign my house away. Memory can be tricky at our age, he muttered. Then I saw it. A calendar on his wall with the Lynx Horizon logo, and a file on his desk labelled Consulting Retainer. Tyler had bought him. My husband's best friend had sold me out for a consulting fee. I tried to fight it myself. I called Evertide headquarters, demanding the full audit trail of my policy. I apologize, Mrs. Marsh, the representative said in a robotic tone. Due to the active claim status and your designated medical incompetency flag, only your legal guardian, Mr. Tyler Marsh, can release those files. I was trapped behind a wall of glass and legal jargon. I had only one option left. I taped a small digital recorder to my chest, hiding it beneath my blouse, and agreed to meet Tyler and Sabrina at the Lynx Horizon offices in New York. I told them I was ready to apologize. The office was freezing, smelling of expensive espresso and ozone. Tyler looked impeccable in a navy suit, his face a mask of concerned benevolence. He slid a thick stack of papers across the marble conference table. "This is a comprehensive settlement." "Mom?" Tyler said softly. "The cruise line, Evertide, and Lynx Horizon. We want to ensure you are taken care of. If you sign this admission that the explosion was a system failure and waive criminal suspicion, you get a monthly stipend." Sabrina leaned forward, her eyes scanning me like I was a broken spreadsheet. "Look at the numbers. Eleanor, you are 61. The average life expectancy for a woman in your demographic is 80. If you stick to a reasonable budget, this stipend will last you exactly until you naturally expire." The coldness of her calculation took my breath away. They had priced out my remaining years down to the cent. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You tried to kill me once on the ocean," I said, my voice steady and hard. "Do not be stupid enough to think I will let you bury me in paperwork here in an air-conditioned office." The room went silent. Tyler's expression shifted from concern to annoyance. "You are being hysterical again, Mother," he said, checking his watch. "The offer expires in 24 hours. I walked out. When I got back to the apartment, a foreclosure notice from the bank was waiting in the mailbox. If I did not pay the loan interest the loan Tyler took out, I would be homeless in 30 days. They were tightening the noose. But they forgot one thing. I was not just a mother. I was an accountant for 40 years. I ignored the foreclosure notice and sat down at my dining table with my laptop. I began to pull the public financial filings for Lynx Horizon, Evertide, and their subsidiary shell companies. I traced the routing numbers, the dates of the payouts, and the cross-referencing directors. By 3 a.m, the pattern emerged from the chaos of numbers. It was not just about me. I saw hundreds of small, high-risk insurance payouts buried in their quarterly reports. This was not just a murder attempt. It was an industrial-scale insurance fraud network. Retirement did not suit me. Neither did being a victim. 2 days after receiving the foreclosure notice, I walked into Brookside Ledgers, a small accounting firm run by my old friend Nora. I told her I was bored and needed to keep my hands busy, so she set me up with a terminal in the back corner. She had no idea that I was not there to balance local tax returns. I was there because her firm paid for a premium subscription to a global corporate data registry, a tool I could no longer afford on my own. I spent my lunch breaks hunting. I pulled the public filings for Lynx Horizon and cross-referenced them with Evertide's quarterly reports. To the untrained eye, it looked like standard corporate synergy. To an accountant with 40 years of experience, it looked like a laundromat. I found a recurring line item labeled Maritime Accident Processing Fees every quarter. Evertide transferred sums ranging from $200,000 to $500,000 into 3 specific investment vehicles managed by Lynx Horizon. From there, the money vanished into shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. I started searching for names. I found Arthur Vance, 72 years old, lost at sea 6 months ago. Beatrice Cole, 68 years old, disappeared from a balcony during a storm last year. In every case, the payout was swift. The families remained silent, and the insurance provider was Evertide. I knew I could not take this to the local police. They would just see a conspiracy theorist. I needed someone who understood the language of fraud. I found a blog run by Jake Rowe, a financial investigator who had exposed a hedge fund Ponzi scheme the year before. I sent him a secure email with a single spreadsheet attached and a subject line. The cost of a burial at sea is higher than you think. We met at a crowded coffee shop in downtown Boston. When Jake walked in, he looked past me twice, scanning the room for a whistleblower in a suit. He stopped dead when he saw a 61-year-old woman in a wool cardigan waving him over. "You are the source," Jake asked, sliding into the booth. I was expecting someone different. "You were expecting a shark," I said, sliding a manila folder across the table. "But sometimes you just need a mother who knows how to balance a checkbook. Look at page 3. Look at the liquidity ratios." Jake opened the folder. He scanned the pages, his skepticism melting into shock. This is a structured settlement mill. They are betting against their own clients and rigging the game to ensure the payout happens. If this holds up, this is federal wire fraud." "I am the living proof," I whispered. "And I have an ally." I showed him the email I had received that morning from Detective Rosa Alvarez. She had forwarded my file to a contact at the Department of Justice, noting that the official incident report from the ship had been altered after it was filed. The gas pressure readings had been deleted. Evertide was scrubbing the crime scene digitally. If I go after Tyler for attempted murder, his lawyers will call me senile, I told Jake. But if we expose a $100 million fraud ring, the IRS and the FBI will tear his company apart to find the last penny. Jake nodded, a fierce light in his eyes. "We need more. We need a direct link between your son and the intent to defraud. We need him to say it." I knew what I had to do. That night, I swallowed my pride and dialed Tyler's number. I made sure my voice sounded tired and defeated. "Tyler," I said when he answered. "I have been thinking. I do not want to lose my apartment. I think I am ready to look at the settlement papers again. I knew you would come around." "Mum," Tyler said. His speech was slurred, the background noise loud with music and clinking glasses. He was celebrating. "You are doing the right thing, really." I kept him on the line, letting him ramble. I heard Sabrina's voice in the background, asking who it was. "It is the Golden Goose." Tyler laughed, his voice dripping with arrogant intoxication. "Hey, Sabrina, I told you she would fold. From now on, every grey-haired tourist who steps onto a Blue Harbor ship is a goldmine for us. We just have to help nature take its course." My hand shook as I held the phone, but I did not cry. I looked down at the digital recorder spinning on my desk. "You are right, Tyler," I said softly. "You are absolutely right." I ended the call and saved the file. He had just handed me the shovel to dig his grave. The yellow envelope from the Massachusetts family court arrived at 8 in the morning. I stared at the legal jargon, my coffee turning cold in my hand. Tyler was filing for emergency guardianship. The petition claimed I was suffering from severe post-traumatic instability and was highly susceptible to financial predation. If the judge granted this, I would lose the right to sign a check, hire a lawyer, or even choose where I lived. Tyler would own me. Then came the public execution. A local lifestyle magazine published a glossy interview titled "The Burden of Love," featuring a somber photo of Tyler looking out a window. The article described his heroic efforts to care for a mother who had lost her grip on reality. Worse, Sabrina uploaded a video to social media. It was grainy footage taken by Dr. Ramos on the ship, edited to show only the moments where I was screaming about bombs and conspiracies. cutting out the parts where I was gasping for air from gas poisoning. To the world, I looked like a raving lunatic. Neighbours I had known for 20 years started crossing the street to avoid me, their eyes filled with pity. I knew fighting back with anger would only prove their point. So, I played the part. I am so sorry, Tyler. I wept into the phone, making sure my voice trembled. Maybe you are right. Maybe I do need help. I will see your specialist. Tyler booked me an appointment with Dr. Lindsay Park, a high-profile psychiatrist on the Lynx Horizon payroll. I walked into her office wearing a drab grey sweater, looking small and defeated. For the first 20 minutes, I let her ask about my childhood and my grief. Then, I opened my handbag. Dr. Park, I said, my voice suddenly clear and sharp. I know my son pays your retainer, but I also know you took an oath before you sign the competency evaluation. Look at this. I laid out the timeline. Not the emotional one, but the financial one. I showed her the emails from Evertide, the forged medical consent forms, and the bank transfers that coincided with the dates of other accidents at sea. A paranoid person sees enemies in the shadows, I told her, tapping the paper where Tyler's signature sat next to a $300,000 transfer. An accountant sees patterns in the ledger. Does this look like a hallucination to you? Dr. Park looked at the documents, then at me. I saw the conflict behind her glasses. She said nothing, but she did not push the papers away. That afternoon, Jake Rowe called me. His voice was tight. We have a problem. Ellie, Charles Yates, the COO of Evertide, is being vetted for a director position at the Federal Insurance Office. If he gets that seat, he will bury this whole investigation under national security protocols. We cannot wait for the perfect case, I said. Burn them now. The next morning, Jake published his article, The Seafair Protocol: How Luxury Cruises Become Floating Coffins. He did not name me, but he laid out the mechanics of the scam within 2 hours. Evertide stock dropped 12%. By lunch, Lynx Horizon had lost nearly 8% of its value. My phone rang. It was Tyler. "What have you done?" he screamed. Do you have any idea how much leverage I have exposed? You are destroying everything I built. I am just a confused old woman. Tyler, I said calmly, I do not understand stocks. Stop the act, he roared, losing all control. I need that liquidity. The Seafair payouts are the only thing covering the losses from the biotech merger. If the insurance underwriters freeze the funds because of some blog post, we are insolvent in a month. I pressed the stop button on my recorder. He had just admitted to using fraudulent insurance claims to cover business losses. I have to go. Tyler, I said. I have another call. It was Dr. Lindsay Park. Mrs. Marsh, she said, her tone professional but warm. I just wanted to inform you that I have submitted my evaluation to the court. I stated that not only are you cognitively sound, but you demonstrate a level of acuity superior to most of my younger patients. Tyler's petition for guardianship will be dismissed with prejudice. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I had been holding for days. The mouse had just sprung the trap. Agent Marcus Doyle from the Financial and Fraud Authority sat at my small kitchen table, looking out of place among the knitted coasters and ceramic mugs. He was a man of few words, preferring to let the dossier on the table speak for itself. Beside him, Jake wired a tiny camera into the frame of a pair of reading glasses, his hands moving with surgical precision. Mrs. Marsh, I want to be clear, Agent Doyle said, his voice grave. We have the patterns, but we need the intent. We need to catch them selling the death clause. But putting you back on a Blue Harbor ship, it is a risk I am not comfortable with. I am the only bait they will bite, I replied, pouring him a cup of black coffee. If I go as a volunteer, looking to prove to the world that I trust my son again, Tyler will not be able to resist. He needs the PR more than he needs me dead right now. Detective Rosa had found the schedule. The Ocean Serenity was docked for repairs, but its sister ship, the Azure Horizon, was departing from Miami in 3 days. The route was identical. The insurance partner was Evertide. It was the perfect stage. The plan was a logistical masterpiece. I would board as a regular passenger, but I would not be alone. Agent Doyle had placed 4 undercover agents on the manifest, posing as tourists, and 2 more in the engineering crew. Jake had set up a direct uplink from my glasses and handbag to a server van parked at the port. Every word I spoke, every document I touched, would be recorded in real time. Tyler, desperate to stop the bleeding of his stock price, fell for the trap instantly. His lawyer, Victor Hale, had convinced him that a public reconciliation cruise would kill the rumors started by Jake's blog. When I called to say I wanted to take the trip to clear my head and support the family business, Tyler actually thanked me. He had no idea he was signing his own warrant. Boarding the ship felt like walking into a lion's den. My heart hammered against my ribs. But the GPS tracker taped to my lower back gave me a strange sense of comfort. As soon as my ticket was scanned, Agent Doyle's voice crackled in my earbud, invisible beneath my hair. We have a hit on the internal network. Eleanor, your name just got flagged in the Evertide database. Case code red. They are watching you. I played my part perfectly. On the second day, I sat in the lounge with an Evertide representative, a slick young man named Kevin. I adjusted my glasses to ensure the camera caught the paperwork. My son worries so much about the cost of, well, if something happens to me, I said, making my hands tremble slightly. Is there a way to make it easier for him? Kevin smiled, pulling out a familiar form. Absolutely, ma'am. We have the Seafair Departure Rider. It simplifies everything. If a tragedy occurs at sea, your son receives an immediate, tax-free payout. It is about love, really, leaving no burden behind. Got him. Jake's voice whispered in my ear. That is a solicitation of fraud. Keep going. But the real shock came that evening. I walked into the main ballroom for the captain's welcome, only to see a banner on the stage, investing in your golden years. Guest speaker Tyler Marsh. He was here. He was so arrogant, so sure of his control, that he had come aboard to personally sell his investment products to the very demographic he was exploiting. The FFA agents signaled me to hold my position, but I saw an opening. After his speech, Tyler stepped off the stage, surrounded by admiring elderly couples. He spotted me and froze, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second before he composed himself. He walked over, gripping my shoulder a little too hard. "Mum," he said, loud enough for the cameras. "So glad you are enjoying the trip. You look healthy." I leaned in close, embracing him. To the room. It looked like a tender mother-son moment, but I pulled him down so my lips were right next to his ear. "Do you remember the one-way ticket you gave me?" "Tyler?" I whispered, my voice ice cold. "I am holding one right now, but this time, the person leaving on it is not going to be me." I pulled back to see the color drain from his face. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, he did not see a victim. He saw the end. The moon hung low over the water, casting long, shifting shadows across the private observation deck of the azure horizon. It was the final night of the voyage. Under my silk scarf, the wire taped to my chest felt hot against my skin. Somewhere in the darkness above, hidden among the radar towers and ventilation stacks, I knew Agent Doyle's team was watching through thermal scopes. Tyler leaned against the teak railing, swirling a glass of amber scotch. He looked tired, his perfect suit slightly rumpled. He was playing the part of the weary provider perfectly. "You know why I work so hard?" "Mom?" Tyler asked, his voice thick with emotion. "It is for you. Growing up without Dad, seeing you struggle with the bills, it scarred me. I swore I would never let you worry again. The pressure to keep Link's horizon afloat, to keep the investors happy. It is crushing me. I just wanted you to be comfortable for the rest of your life." It was a masterclass in manipulation. He was gaslighting me, twisting his greed into a twisted form of sacrifice. I did not blink. I did not cry. "If you wanted me comfortable, Tyler?" I asked softly, stepping out of the shadows. "Why do all your contracts only make money when I am dead? Why did the smoke detectors fail exactly when the fire started in my cabin on the last ship?" Tyler stiffened. He set his glass down a little too hard. "You are confused again. That was a system failure. I told you, bad luck follows us. Bad luck." I reached into my purse and pulled out the old boarding pass from the Ocean Serenity, the one stamped in red. I placed it on the table next to my current keycard. They are both one-way tickets, but there is a difference. This time, I brought an audience. Tyler scoffed, a nervous sound. "You are recording this? Fine. Go ahead. I admit I have a deal with Evertide to maximize returns on high-risk elderly clients. It is aggressive, sure, but it is not illegal. It is just creative accounting." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone. I pressed play. His own voice, slurred and arrogant from our phone call, echoed across the silent deck. "Every grey-haired tourist is a gold mine." Tyler's face went pale, but I was not done. I slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of an email Rosa had hacked from Sabrina's laptop just hours ago. "Sabrina was sloppy," I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. "She wrote to Victor Hale that the fire on the sea tonight had to be cleaner than the one in Mapleford. She used the word incinerate. Tyler." He looked at the paper. The veins in his neck bulged. The mask of the loving sun finally shattered, revealing the monster underneath. "Fine," he roared, slamming his fist onto the table. "Yes, I planned it. You have always been a burden. Mum, you leached off me my whole life with your guilt and your mediocrity. I built this empire, and you are just debris. Who cares if one old woman dies at sea? You are worth more dead than you ever were alive." The confession hung in the salty air. He had said it. He had signed his life away. Realizing what he had done, panic took over. He grabbed a fruit knife from the serving tray, his eyes wild. "Give me that phone." He lunged at me. I did not move. I did not flinch. I looked him straight in the eye, ready to accept my fate if I had to. But I didn't need to. 3 dark shapes dropped from the upper deck. "Federal agents." "Drop the weapon." Tyler was tackled to the deck before the blade could even scratch me. The knife skittered across the wood. The sound of heavy boots filled the air as the Coast Guard and FFA agents swarmed the deck. The ship's PA system crackled to life, ordering all passengers to remain in their cabins. I walked over to where they had him pinned. Tyler was panting, his face pressed against the floorboards, handcuffs clicking tight around his wrists. He looked up at me, confused, betrayed, and small. "I told you," I whispered, looking down at the son I had loved and the stranger who had tried to kill me. "This really is a one-way ticket, Tyler. But this time, it is a one-way ticket to federal prison. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you folks are tuning in from, so please drop your city or country in the comments below, because I love reading about where my voice is traveling to. If you enjoyed this journey, please do not forget to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, hit that like button, and give us a hype to help more people hear this story.